Let's take the second-hand Chibson Les Paul, point out how to spot a fake, then tear it apart and see if I can transform it into an absolute weapon. Stay till the end, you'll see whether it works or I fail and chuck it in the bin. Hold on though, before we rip this thing apart, let's take a quick look over it. The paint doesn't actually look too bad. It's got some shrinkage into the timber, so I'm not sure if it's polyurethane or whether this is some type of lacquer. Who knows, it's a Chibson, so it could be a combination of superglue, cat piss and cobwebs. Only the person who made this thing will have any idea of that. But to be fair, the binding on this thing is actually really well done. It's nice and neat, all of the corners and edges match up perfectly. The only problem is on that headstock, it's in the wrong place, but don't worry about that. That being said, the dot markers on the side of the neck, they're piss weak. And even though they're made out of second-hand toilet seats, these inlays are actually pretty good. Way better than an Epiphone I've got. The Epiphone's all uneven. These are bang on. However, the pickups, I did plug this in and have a bit of a play, and these do not offend me. Hit pause, head down to the comments and let me know what you think these are. Are they Chinese shit, or are they maybe something a little bit better, like a third-party pickup that someone's put into this thing? It is second-hand, remember. How are we going to measure this thing? I don't have a Les Paul at hand, but I do have my 90s Firebird. Now this thing plays and feels like a dream. The Chibson does have nibs on the binding, but they're really badly done and feel terrible. So I was thinking maybe we can make it feel and play a little bit more like my Firebird. Now my Firebird does have the jumbo flat style frets, you know, where they're a lot lower but they're really wide. Good thing about the Chibson is it's got medium jumbo, so if I take a shit ton off of those, then they'll be flat and wide just like the Firebird. So that's what I'm going to crack on and give a go at doing. But before I start ripping it apart, I'm going to keep my promise and show you how to spot a fake. So number one thing that you can look at is the overall shape of the guitar. The shape of the body is actually not too bad, and to the untrained eye actually looks pretty damn good. But if we move up here a bit, have a look at this thing, man. The headstock on this thing is just a little bit weird. Compared to this real one, it's just a bit stretched out and too long. Next thing to take a look at the headstock is the logo and the decals that are on here. So that logo is placed too low and it's just a little bit off. The diamonds are a bit wonky and not really all that well done either. So that rings a ton of alarm bells. This whole headstock is just a bit funky looking. So my advice is when you look at a headstock and you go, that doesn't really look like a Gibson, then it's probably not. The other thing to look at on the headstock is the serial number and how it's put in there. I can tell straight away by looking at this, the serial number's just wrong. But the biggest thing here is that that serial number has been stamped in after the lacquer. Now Gibsons are stamped into the timber and then lacquered over. So that's easy to spot. Another thing is if you've got a good eye, you can tell that they've used the wrong font. Machine heads are usually a good giveaway as well, but unfortunately some people do replace them, so it's not definitive. These ones are Gottos, so who knows. Moving on to the back of the guitar. If you've got hardware screws, then it's likely fake. This is also the wrong shape, and none of this sits flush to the back. These are kind of countersunk in a little bit too far. Also the plastic material is wrong. So this is kind of easy giveaways, but I do understand if you've never held a proper Gibson before, this could probably be something that you overlook. A lot of Chibsons will also have a piss poor attempt at binding. However, this one here is absolutely spot on. The binding on this is actually as good as any Gibson I've ever seen. With the exception of these absolute piss weak side dot markers. These things are terrible. They're small, they're uneven, and that is a dead giveaway. And if that's not quite enough for you, you should know that Gibsons do not use plastic nuts. Now, if you get this far along and you're still questioning whether it's real or not, I would say it's going to be a good idea for you to find someone that can help you out with it. Because if you're unable to spot the fakery of this by now, then you're going to need some help. There are a few other things here that are dead giveaways. If you know what they are, hit them in the comments. One of them being blatantly obvious, the other one is a little bit trickier to spot. So why do guitar luthiers and techs loosen the tension on the strings before they cut them? Well, one theory is that you don't want to shock that neck in a sudden release of tension. I don't know, I've never done any scientific proof on that, but I kind of agree with it a little bit. The other reason is I don't want to take a string in the frickin' eye. Here's some more hardware shop screws holding the pickup surrounds on. Okay, so the first of the dead easy giveaways that I didn't mention earlier. These pole pieces that the bridge sit on shouldn't have these adjuster screw slots in them. Real Gibsons have the small domed head on them. And this tailpiece is just a little bit off with the way that it's shaped and made. Keep watching, because later on I will show you what the other subtle giveaway is on this guitar. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. If you've already spotted it, head down to the comments and let me know. You see what I'm doing here? Yep, I'm trying to get the algorithm to work for my videos. We all know it, so just go down and comment fucking anything for me, would you? The dude who owned this before me hit all the gold hardware with steel wool. He was saying that he wanted it to be silver, which is why he's put the silver Godot machine heads on it. Clearly had no understanding of what a Les Paul custom should look like. Another thing you can look at if you're going to get a bit more in depth with this is take the truss rod cover off, and straight away you can tell. If this has an Allen key in it, then it's a complete fakery. And actually, before we even take it off, we can see that this is the wrong shape and it's just not really well executed. The screen print on it is not very good at all. Real Gibsons have a hex bolt on the end with a flat washer. And like I already knew, this has got an Allen key adjuster in it. No surprises there. And that other subtle giveaway I was talking about is the screw holding the scratch guard on. It's just in the wrong place. Once you see it, you can't not see it. Oh, now these are Epiphone pickups, and I believe that they are early Epiphone Les Paul pickups. But that's why when I first plugged this guitar in, I wasn't disappointed in the way it sounded. I actually thought it sounded really good, and I thought, wow, those are actually really good pickups. They do have the script Epiphone logo, and they are both labelled with a F and a R. F for front, R for rear. The blue wire did puzzle me a little bit though. These are usually a red wire and a yellow wire. Red is usually the bridge and yellow is usually the neck. Never seen a blue one before. I am going to put these pickups back in. They are a little bit microphonic though, so maybe I will wax pot them at a later date, but for what we're doing here, these will be just fine. That switch looks very familiar, and lifting this off, I recognise this harness. We've got full-size pots, we've got the white clip and that wiring and those caps. This, I believe, is an Epiphone Les Paul harness. So I think somebody has ratted an Epiphone and taken the pickups and the complete wiring harness and just dropped it straight into this. To be honest with you, I probably would have just kept the bloody Epiphone. Even though this is okay, I'm going to rip it all out and do some custom wiring. I might keep these pots because there's nothing wrong with them, and that switch is perfectly fine. It's an Epiphone branded one. I'm going to order some gold tulip styled replacement tuners, so I'll wait for those to turn up, but for this video I'll just probably reuse these ones. Alright, so here's a nice hot tip. When you've pulled everything apart, it's always a good idea to bag and tag everything. That way you're not going to lose stuff while you're working on your guitar. And this thing is covered in someone else's finger cheese and man juice, so I am going to glove up and get this cleaned down. Well, this neck does indeed have a slight twist in it, so I think what I'm going to do is just level it by taking a shit ton of meat off these frets. This is a counterfeit guitar. I'm never going to sell it, so it's not worth repairing this neck properly. I'm just going to get it so it's playable and we can have some fun with it. Actually, I wonder if I can tighten the shit out of it and pull that twist out. Let's have a look. Oh, it's got a backbone now, so maybe we'll loosen it off again and see what happens. Well, it took a little bit out, but not enough, so I think we'll just go back to the original idea of grinding the shit out of the frets with a leveling beam. Well, I am actually a little bit surprised here because these have actually come up a lot better than I was thinking they were going to. The profile of the nibs that I've gotten here parts are so close to this Firebird, it's tricky to tell them apart. And the frets being flattened out like that feel very, very similar. I think a good cleanup and a polish, and these are going to feel pretty dang good. There is still a bit of a gap between the fret and the binding, but they are now looking more like Gibson frets. And they do actually feel pretty damn close. Got more of the right shape. They're nice and smooth. You're not going to catch anything on those. I'm going to take the Epiphone harness and rewire it a bit more custom-like. Nothing wrong with the switch, it works fine. Might get rid of the plastic plug, I'm not a fan of that. I'll solder it in. I'm going to reuse these pots. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but I do want to rewire them to make a template. So it's pretty straightforward. Just tape this here to hold it there for a second. Doesn't need to be flash. Don't take a blade to a guitar like this if you've got a nice one. If you're making a template for a guitar that you care about, or if it's a customer's guitar, outline this with pencil, then take it off and then cut it out. You can always put it back in. Don't rush with it. But this is a Chibson, so it's very highly likely you end up in the bin. Now, why'd you screw around with that? Well, that means I can see now where I need to run my ground wires and things so that they're not getting in the way. Get volume, get tone, bridge, volume, bridge, tone. But first things first, let's strip all this off. I want to overstress it with heat. So these ones come off a bit easier. Now those pots have just seen quite a bit of heat. So before I clean them up, I'm just going to let them cool off for a little bit. So what I like to do is put a nice blob of solder on the backs. Now when you've got a nice new pot, you usually get a nice little dome of solder on them, but this is by all means nowhere near new, so it's going to run into the other solder. If you use wire like I do, I use vintage pushback wiring. This is the solid core stuff, so it's not pre-tinned, so you have to tin it. If you're using the stuff that's got the multiple wires wrapped, then it should be pre-tinned. So on these ones I like to go to the outside edge. Now it'll pick a little bit of a bend on here. You want to give it a little bit of room too so that it can move in or out a little bit, just in case you've got to push them around a little bit while you're inserting them. You don't want it to be super tight, so you need a little bit of give in them. See how I've got this bend. This bend here is for two reasons. One, to get around the edge of that. And two, because if it's rigid like that, then when you go to put these in, if you're slightly out, you've got no movement. So just don't forget to give yourself a little bit of movement. Again, this one will go from edge to edge. So I'll put a blob on the outside of this one as well. The outside of this one. Might as well do them all while we're here. There you go. When you solder them, you should be able to get a nice shiny dome like that. You don't want your solder looking all crusty and gross. And make sure, one, you've got a clean tip. You can do that with either a wet sponge or with this type of stuff. You just go in and out. Keep that tip clean. Make sure you tin the wire. Now when you tin the wire, you heat the wire and then push the solder onto the wire like that. Don't try and heat the solder and then drop it onto the wire because you'll just never get there. Okay? Once it's tinned and once you've got a blob on your pop, put a little bit of solder on your tip like that. Doesn't have to be heaps. Then you can hold your wire down and you just place that on top like that. Give it a second. And boom. There it is. It's that easy. There's no need to be making a big mess on the top of it. Okay? Let's go to this one. So I'm just going to be wiring this up as a classic vintage style. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ground our volume pots. So tin wire, put through, melt it on. That'll need a little bit more, but we'll do that after we've done this. We just bend this guy over, cut it first. And this one we can just tin it as we solder it. That's it. Then we'll put a bit extra on this here because we just didn't quite have enough on. It was almost like tack welding, right? Okay, now because of the way we're wiring this, our tones are going to have centre-like grounds. So go from that centre-like. Yeah. It's hot. Alright, there's all our grounds done, right? Now all we need to do is put our caps in. And these will go from your centre, which is output, over to your tone. And it really is that easy. So I like to try and get these so they sit really, really nicely. So what I want to do here is cut a piece of the pushback wire off. I'll just take the wire out. So I've got a little piece of shield in there. And then I just push it on to the lid. Now, the reason that I am shielding these is because I like to bend my wires in a way that keeps these in a nice neat fashion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to push it actually through and behind. That way it'll come out there. Because it's shielded, I don't have to worry about it shorting or anything. It's going to give me a nice neat little wiring to run. So, solder these in.
Can you get me some wine? I mean, I'll drink that.
We're honest.
I'll come to you. Get my beat, I get mine too. Where's your toothbrush? There, at least. Is it a clean head?
No, doesn't matter. It's only going to be clean dirt.
I was going to say, because I've got a clean head if you want that.
Isn't it? So the number one reason for 3-a-side headstocks going out of tune is that the nut pinches on the string. You see, the string needs to break an angle to go out towards the machine head, and usually those nuts are just cut straight. What I find is if you cut a slight angle in it to help the string on its way towards the peg head, it reduces the friction and lets your guitar stay in tune a whole lot better. I also like to blob a little bit of this sewing machine oil in here as well. This stuff's real good for keeping that nut nice and slippery. So here's the thing. I had planned on finishing this video with me saying, did I get this right or did I fail? And I was just going to drop this thing in a bin and walk away. The problem I have is that it's kind of good, even with all the fucking fingerprints. Does this feel like a Chibson Les Paul? No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel anything like a Chibson Les Paul. Fingerboard radius is about 20 inches. It should be 12 inches, so it's too flat. The neck is way too skinny. It's probably about the right weight. It feels heavy enough. Does that mean it's not nice? No. This thing is really, really cool to play and a lot of fun. The nibs feel really nice. The neck, even though it's quite flat, it allows you to get a really, really low action on it. And I was able to get that twist out, which means double bending's no issue. And everything on it is awesome. Plays great. If you close your eyes hard enough and think you're a happy place, you might be forgiven for thinking it's pretty close to my Firebird. But my Firebird has got a lot more meat and it has that 12-inch radius. So I'm not going to give you a listen to it because it kind of sounds like an Epiphone Les Paul. So there's not much point in playing it. So what am I going to do with this? I don't know. I'm just going to play it because it's kind of fun. I can't sell it, not with Gibson written on the headstock there. I mean, I could like sand the headstock down and refinish it and put a different logo on it, but I'm not sure there's much point to that. I am going to put some gold tulip-shaped machine heads on it, and I've got some new pickup covers coming because these have been sanded with steel wool, so they've gone silver and they look a bit shit. Now this has got all new electrics in it. It's got, as you know, it's got Epiphone pickups again. It might need some better quality knobs because that just fucking fell off. But it is custom wired as well. So, I mean, what makes a cool guitar? I mean, the way it sounds and the way it feels. And to be honest with you, this feels and sounds really, really freaking good. I mean, Chibsons are actually not that bad, but they do need some work. Out of the box, they're pretty shit. And I would say if this one had come with its original electronics, it would have been even shitterer. But if you got a bit of know-how and you can clean up the fingerboard and get it playable and get it playing really nice, and you can put some decent electronics into them, then you're left with a pretty damn good guitar. And I got this on Marketplace for next to nothing. So, I mean, it's a pretty cool Les Paul style guitar for sweet fuck all money. You can't really complain about that, can you? Anyway, if you want me to write a song on this and like do one of those little demo thingies, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, man, I'd love it if you hit the like button, subscribe button, leave a comment, even hit the dislike button if you thought this was a pile of shit of a video. I don't mind. Just do some engagement with me. Oh, and that's right. Also, something else that I wanted to tell you guys was that